Hey, folks, thanks for tuning in to the BAMF podcast. I am your host, Michael Lafferty, and here is our contractually mandated intro music. Now, that music to assure you, gentle viewer, that this is a high production values operation. Only the most professional, best of the best. Is what we do here, folks. And to prove that we're consummate professionals, I've created a tiny URL for Mr. James Kerr's game, tinyurl.com/psychic danger. You can go check out James' Kickstarter. I do that because it's a lot nicer to say tinyurl.com/psychic danger than it is to read off the entire URL for James' game. So, and not to bury the lead, Mr. James Kerr from Radio James Games is our guest tonight. How you doing, James?
Hello. Thank you very much for having me on tonight, Mike, and thank you, Jacob. It's wonderful to be here.
It is always a pleasure. Jacob Blackman is my frequent co-host and an artist and RPG creator in his own right. Jacob, how are things in Oklahoma today?
Doing all right today.
All right, cool. Let us take a look. This is an interesting game you have, James. I like the idea. It's called Psychic Danger Society. It's a cozy tabletop game of mystery, psychic prediction, community, and tea. I'm picturing this as the Golden Girls meets the Tomorrow People, but I'm not exactly sure if I'm on the right page there.
No, so. You're definitely on the right page. That's a good summation, or like a tag team Murder She Wrote / I don't know, some kind of psychic underground. it's the point. I wanted to focus on a few things with this. One is, I mean, the whole root of this takes from the fact that it was a particularly uncanny marriage of mechanics and setting. So mechanically, you roll the dice at the beginning of the night during your seance, and then you don't roll them the rest of the night. You spend them out as your psychic predictions coming into being. So I thought, well, that does sound very psychic. Like, that sounds psychic. You know, you make your psychic predictions. You're like, you're not quite sure what they are yet, but until they come into play, into being. And then I wanted to pair that with, well, who are the best psychics? Best, you know, not in a qualitative sense, but like best in a thematic sense, perhaps, are little old lady psychics. And I've wanted to do something cozy and small town for quite a while. So I'm using little old lady as kind of a too broad of a term, maybe, because I grew up in a small town, and in the small town that I grew up in, I don't know what your upbringing was like, but in my small town,
yes, I have cousins who went to school with John Mellencamp. I know about small towns. I'm sorry, I've been wanting to use that joke for a long time. You go ahead, sir.
It's a good joke. You could tell me a little story about it later. But in my small town, everything happened under the watchful eye of various women's groups: the CWL, the Catholic Women's League, the hospital board, the library board, the Friends of the Library. You know, anything that got done by a kind of network of ladies, of middle-aged ladies, of old ladies, of powerful ladies, and we don't feature them in tabletop role-playing games. We don't do enough with them, but they're your Jessica Fletchers, you know, they're your Golden Girls, they're your go-getty people. And who else would be trying to alleviate all the danger from a small town than these ladies forming their own little group, the Psychic Danger Society, and preventing all danger. And then the kind of meta narrative is that, well, maybe you're preventing too much danger. You know, you get a psychic inkling that the teenager at the grocery store is going to fall and crack his head. Okay, so let's go down there and save the teenager from cracking his head at the grocery store. But as you fail cases, which is inevitably going to happen because they splinter, you get more and more and more cases, they start taking on a kind of supernatural bent. So it may have started that you needed to get a cat out of a tree, but by the end of the night, the new mayoral candidate is secretly a vampire. So we're maintaining cozy. We're maintaining the kind of wonderfully, I don't want to say sanitized murder, but like murder in the 80s is kind of sweet, like even when it's supposed to be sinister, there's a kind of sweet bent to it. So the focus is on small town relationships, even if that's sometimes a Murder, She Wrote style small town.
I understand completely. Well, I mean, you had the two big cozy mystery shows of the 80s, the Father Downing Mysteries, and as we mentioned, Murder, She Wrote with Jessica Fletcher. Very cozy, very pleasant, very comfortable. And someone dies horribly every single episode.
And she's never implicated. That's
well.
This is not necessarily a period piece. This is taking place now, but these small towns still exist, and we're still out there. And so I wanted a sense of ownership over your community, and it's lovely. I think it's lovely. I like what it brings out in people. I like what it encourages in players, and it's a nice, very much not Dungeons and Dragons experience.
Yeah, honestly, I like the idea of the community here, and with the kind of characters to be played. All too often, if you have when you have investigations, I see the players go in and they're just roughhousing everyone, just telling everyone, "Tell me what I want to know." Give me what I want. Let me. There's just, whereas the kind of characters you're going to be playing here want to maintain their community bonds, so they're going to be very kind and passive and sociable, even with people who they may be enemies with.
Absolutely.
So that will really help change how players would approach the situation in order to maintain the feel of the campaign. I like that.
And an added layer on top of that, like just to build on what you're saying, is the fact that you have psychic powers, so psychic predictions, and you can't let anyone else know that you have psychic powers and psychic predictions. Mm-hmm. So, the Tommy is the 8-year-old kid is gonna fall from the rafters in the old barn that he wasn't supposed to be in, but you don't. How do you know that?
Oh, and to add on what we were saying earlier, the organizational meta name that I have come to love for the old ladies that run society came from the television show Miss Marvel, the Illuminantes.
That's clever. I like that.
That is clever and lovely.
So if you don't mind, James, I want to ask you about your mechanics. And I hate to say that because that's the geekiest sentence I think I've uttered in a week or so, but I was just curious because I've seen maybe one other game that does this. If I understand correctly, you roll all your dice at the beginning of the game. So you know your scores, and you just spend those scores as the game goes on. Is that correct?
Yes. So you take a bunch of D12s, and it's 12s because you deal with clocks and things that go on base 12. So you roll 5 D12, each of you, and that gives you a spread. I did a 10 and a 5 and a 3 and a 1 and a 12. I don't know if that's like 5 numbers. And then as the events transpire, in order to resolve conflict, rather than any time that you would be rolling for a dice, you're instead putting forward one of the dice you've already rolled against what the GM establishes as the scale of difficulty, which you're given a kind of good broad sense of the scale of difficulty. So you have a good sense of agreement between yourself and the GM as to what those numbers would be. But the GM's role is largely to decide how difficult tasks are. Because if you put forward a number that's greater than the problem at hand, well, then you succeed. If you put forward a number that's lesser than the problem at hand, then you fail. Now, success and failure means more than just in the moment. There's a thing going on in the background called the danger clock that's actually what resolves the case, what means that there's no more danger, as that ticks back and forth according to some other things. But if you get on the number itself, you put forward a number that this isn't even discussed in the paragraphs that you have there. If you put forward the number itself, well, then there's more danger. You just multiplied the danger. There's now another case that's alive in the small town of Beaumont Camp. So you're playing this guessing game of wondering like, oh, can I is this time to spend my 8? I've got a pretty good 8. That's gonna do most things, even if they're a little bit dangerous. I have an 8, but hey, do you have something higher than that? Do you have something? Do you have a 10? And so people start chatting around the table about what they start working as a team in terms of what their resources are. And people will say things like, well, I've got a 1 and I really don't want to have it come up. Like, can we do this without me having to spend the 1? Because that's, or they find ways to fail that are not going to impact the larger case or influence the narrative of what's going on. So you get things like intentional failure. Be like, oh, well, maybe I don't manage to embarrass myself by shoving an ice cream cone in this guy's face in order to delay him long enough that he doesn't get home. And then so you kind of pick where you need to fail and you pick where you need to succeed. So after it's in some ways it's not even a dice game. It's a diceless game. You just happen to roll it all at first, and then it's kind of a resource management as you talk amongst yourselves and try and figure out how you can spend things on what when, especially given the fact that you each have a different little psychic power and you each have little items that you get that you can come to bear. So like the one character has a minivan that comes in handy, and another character has too many packs of cigarettes, and another character has a endless yarn that they can use, things like that. So mostly mundane things that just kind of flirt a little bit with maybe being a little bit fantastic, like, oh yeah, it's yarn, but why does it keep going on forever? So it's people get to play with those items and play with those ideas, and then they each have a little psychic power, like, oh, you can do a candle's worth of pyrokinesis, or you can move something across the room, but it's wobbly and you get a headache, or it's all very I don't know, down to earth kind of powers, cozy powers, things that are understandably mitigated by the limits of that aren't always glorious.
It's have you ever met a fellow Canadian, David Oakham?
Nope.
Oakham Arts? Oh, okay.
No, we didn't. We haven't met each other at any of the Canadian meetings.
Okay. Well, I just mentioned it because David is the only person I know in the RPG space who is doing cozy grandma adjacent RPG games.
Oh, well, wow, we should totally. I guess we both have a retirement plan, David.
Yeah, he did Grandma World, which you're seeing here, which has a very little old ladies dealing with supernatural issues in the town where they all retired. So sort of Golden Girls meets Buffy, if you will. So.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're a genre, aren't we? So this will be part of this Grandma World, Brindlewood Bay. I don't know. There's a few other grandma games out there, which points, I think, to a desire, to a yearning we have in all of us to be middle-aged ladies solving crimes, and so I guess the question becomes, what is the Psychic Danger Society offering that all the other grandma games aren't?
Well, exactly one other. Sorry.
And I think the answer is, sorry, my dog's upset.
No, that's fine.
I think the answer is that it's got a really interesting marriage of mechanics and setting that tend to bring out and elevate both. It's also a short game. It's only 60 pages, and so it's easily digestible.
Oh, cool. This I just love the theme, and there aren't, as you said, there aren't many games that deal with cozy old ladies sipping their tea as protagonists. So it's a breath of fresh air.
It's I'll tell you, it's pretty wonderful at conventions, running it at conventions, because the majority of players that come out to a table are middle-aged dudes. Right.
Yeah.
Speaking as a middle-aged dude, I can say that. And I was a little bit worried when I started shopping this around to conventions that I was going to get a whole bunch of Monty Python voices.
Yeah.
And people making fun of kind of a performative, imagined, exaggerated, stereotypical, and potentially very offensive idea of femininity. But that absolutely didn't happen in every case that I've taken this out to conventions, and it's going to be at Breakout on the Breakout Con next month, and then at Phantasm in 2 months from now as well. In every case, people have really embraced it seriously, even because it's a silly premise. So in some ways, it's easier to embrace seriously, and not been awful at all.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was one of my big hurdles. Is I was like, oh, I really want to do this game. This really excites me. This really seems really neat.
Mm-hmm.
But is it the kind of thing that players are just going to eat for breakfast?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's always a worry with some certain content. But no, everybody's been really glowing and supportive and interesting, and it's amazing. I've had a lot of people come up to me afterwards and say, wow, I've never played a woman before a role-playing game. I always thought it was weird.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, well, I mean, you know, you know many women in your life. They have a profound effect on your life. So this shouldn't be that. Imagination should not have to stretch that far to be a 42-year-old librarian with a reality TV show addiction. Like, these are very relatable.
These are people you may even have in your family. So
these are sisters and wives and mothers that you're already surrounded with, hopefully. So it's been a really warm and cozy experience. People kind of opening up their role-playing horizons of being a doting grandma with a knitting needle and a cup of tea that's always almost empty.
Mm-hmm.
Just sets down in different places and collecting knickknacks and going to rummage sales, and all the things that you embrace in that life. Right.
Well, let me ask you. You mentioned Brindlewood Bay. I actually hadn't heard of that. I guess that's a Powered by the Apocalypse game dealing with a similar theme.
It is. It's similar in some ways, but its supernatural aspect is very Cthulhu, and I wanted to maintain the line of cozy throughout the kind of supernatural aspect of what's going on, and I also wanted mechanics that really brought out the setting and the characters in a way that Brindlewood Bay instead chooses to make probably the more marketable choice of going with a very accepted system. So no shade, no criticism. It's just I saw Brindlewood Bay and I thought after thinking about this initially, I was like, because you do your research, right? This is the first thing you do. And I saw Brindlewood Bay and I thought, oh, that's nice. I don't want to go that direction. I still want to do cozy little old ladies, but I don't want to go that direction, both mechanically and in terms of its setting. But it's got some lovely art. It did very well. Good for Brindlewood Bay. You know, the Psychic Danger Society will probably not reach the heights of Brindlewood Bay, but that's okay.
Well, let me ask you. You mentioned setting. Do we have like a set pantheon of threats the little ladies deal with regularly, or is it more Monster of the Week?
Yeah, Mike, I'm a little lazy when it comes to running games. So I like games that make me fall backwards into playing, so that I don't have to like take on the kind of whole creative ownership. And so this game has a list, several different lists of cases of things that happen, and you put forward one of your dice as soon as the seance happens to choose your case. So they're rated on 1 to 12. So you have to give up one of your dice to choose that case. And there's different cases for spring and another and more for summer and autumn and winter. And then whole new charts for the supernatural cases when those happen, because they're rare. So you are picking how difficult this is going to be. You are choosing, do you want to start with something that's a little bit walk in the park? Like you put forward that 1, maybe that's a really good way of getting rid of that 1 in order to get an easy case under your belt. Or do you want to put forward the 12 and talk about something apocalyptic that might end the town? And that's been a really interesting bit of freedom to give players, is to like choose your own difficulty, especially because they tend to mess with each other. And that interpersonal politic tends to amplify through the characters and cause a lot of fuss. So it has, I don't know, what's 12 times 4? I'm terrible. 24, 48 cases, 48 mundane cases, 48 supernatural cases, and guidelines for how to build out lists of your own. But each of them are full scenarios so that you can just use this 60-page book, hit the ground running. Like I'm enjoying the convention circuit on this because I don't have to make new games, and I don't have to bring a lot of paper. I just bring the book and go, oh, okay, all right, so, and carry it off from there. Also, the way that the cases are presented, you could play the game 50 times and it will never be the same, because each of the cases only give you little details, and they intentionally don't fill out a lot of the broader aspects. They don't cover all the data. So you might know that a dog is going to be lost and hit by a car. Okay, well, the dog is going to be lost and hit by the car, but we don't know whose dog it is. We don't know where it is. We don't know at what time it is. And so you're given just enough to start the juices flowing, so to speak. And then the GM can earn their salt by filling in some of those details as they come up, as people ask through predictions, because you can find out more about a case, be like, oh, okay, so I get a vision of a dog and it's running on a street and it's hit by a car and oh no, Rover, what have you. And then someone else will put forward a dice to be like, okay, but where is it happening? Oh, it's on Grove Street. Okay, but what is the danger that's precipitating it? And I'll say a dog, because they don't know that it's a bigger dog that scared the smaller dog running into the street or something. So they have to unravel the mystery as it's happening. Oh, but when is it happening? Oh, but it's happening at this time. Oh no, that only gives us 20 minutes to get over there. But the more dice you spend trying to pick up these facts beforehand, the fewer dice you'll have for conflict resolution when you actually arrive on the scene and start trying to sort out the mess. Okay, so they run to where the dog is. They got 20 minutes. They had to maybe spend a dice to get there because it's across town, but they get to Grove Street and they see there are two dogs. Oh no, because there was a bigger dog and a smaller dog. And that's, I know as the GM, I know that that's what the circumstance is. But they're like, okay, well, what are we going to do with these two dogs? Because if we restrain one dog, the other dog might run into the street. So they have to spend their dice to come up with some kind of madcap way of maybe delaying the dogs, throwing the dogs some food, stopping all the cars, putting up barriers. I don't know, like people get insane with their ideas of how to stop this. So it can't ever be the same case. Even Rover gets hit by a car can't ever be the same case from game to game. It's always going to take off in wildly different directions. I just wanted something that, as a GM, it's easy for me to run.
Yeah.
And leads to humorous, interesting madcap adventures that are relevant, right? Because you want the fun, even no matter how silly the fun gets, you still want it to feel like it has a purpose. Because the point at which it's just silly fun and doesn't have a purpose, then you're no longer playing the game. You've drifted away from the structure of what a game is. So it becomes a hilarious adventure.
Cool. That sounds really interesting. I just backed it. I encourage everyone else to do the same.
It's a ringing endorsement, right? Live on air.
You sold me, sir. tinyurl.com/psychic danger. And you've got 20 days, so about 3 weeks left to jump on, 19 days. Very close to goal. Now $300, so just 152 away from making it. So, and if you're interested in James' other games, because James does done a lot of cool games, you can get them, I'm guessing, at a slight discount as add-ons for this campaign.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, they can. They are at pretty good discounts. I forget exactly what, like 20%, 25%, something like that. And I probably published too many games, but there's a bunch of them there.
Yeah, there's the Western Betting Bullets, Kaiju Control. We just had John last month to talk about kaiju movies in this particular game. The Solo Martial Arts Blues Paperback, and then I think of it as your flagship game, but perhaps I'm incorrect. Fight to Survive, sort of an homage to the 80s martial arts with heart movie genre.
Yeah, Fight to Survive is absolutely my flagship game. It's the one that sells the best, so I think that's probably a good indicator. It's also the really expensive one, but it's relatively speaking, right? And I really like it. I have a hard time when I go to conventions because I run in all the slots and I have more games than there are slots in conventions. So I always have to pick what's not going to get run this time. But Fight to Survive is something that I think if I didn't run regularly, people would take great issue with me. So it's up there. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Jacob, you have any thoughts, sir?
No, we've covered most about what I was thinking about discussing. So yeah, I think we're good.
Oh, I just want to squeeze in that the art is done by Jamie Campbell, who is a longtime friend of mine. Who was I surrounded myself with obnoxiously talented artists and just made me look like a chump. I was the kind of guy who was the third best artist in his high school art class, that kind of stuff. But then you leave that world behind, and suddenly people are capable of amazing things. Well, Jamie's one of those amazing artists in my life, and I've been looking for an excuse to bring her into a project for ages, and this is her vibe. And so I wanted to really run with it. So she drew these sweet little ladies that run throughout the book, and in various settings. And they're just cute as can be. So a little bit of cute, a little bit of flowery patterns.
Oh, she does these little these things here too. I don't know what we would call it. Maybe a section header.
That's exactly right. They're section headers, and so just trying to. I wanted the whole book to look like, a little old lady's parlor. The interior of the book should look like there must be a tray with small mints somewhere by there, and possibly some potpourri nearby. And
perhaps a glass bowl with hard candy.
Yes,
always some hard candy.
Yeah. So the whole point of the aesthetic was glass bowl with hard candy. That's what I was trying to go for.
No, it's a really cool idea. I look forward to getting this in my hands. Maybe I can talk to you coming back and running a demo session someday, because this would be something really unique to do. Well, nice. Once again, folks, please back James Games. James Game. tinyurl.com/psychic danger, sort of the unholy love child of Jessica Fletcher and Miss Cleo. Looks like a lot of fun. You should check it out. James, any closing thoughts?
Oh, just I'm grateful to be on board. I'm very thankful for all the people in my life who have inspired me to do this game. I'm really glad for Jamie Campbell to have brought on board. I also have Gemma Grover Hines, who's doing some proofing and sensitivity reading, who is a wonderful person. And she's very clearly one of those powerful ladies herself. And so it's great to have her involved and making sure that I'm not making an absolute fool of myself with the text that I write. And it was some tabletop role-playing games, you have to fight them into existence, and you struggle with them over a long period of time, and they go through lots of different revisions and change faces a lot. The Psychic Danger Society was seamless. It was easy. It was just a whole breath of fresh air breathing out, and it made me feel like it really needed to be in the world. So I'm glad to get it into the world, even though it's probably a little bit too hot on the heels of my last few books. But it's only March. I think I published 3 things in this year. But it's something that I really believe in, this project, and I hope that it finds its audience.
Well, I publish a lot of games too. It's important to have a hobby that keeps you out of the bars. That's what I tell my wife. So I can't begrudge you that. On that happy note, folks, thanks for checking out the Band podcast. Please give James Psychic Danger Society a look, and we will catch you next time on BAMF. Have a good Saturday night, folks.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.